Giving women a voice in sports and female sports fans is very important to She's4Sports, and we're super excited that we have the opportunity to interview Meghan McPeak. She's a trailblazer and someone who has made history as the first female play-by-play announcer for a Canadian professional league. Meghan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So first question, people always say, study hard, be ambitious, and you'll get a job.
Yes.
And it's that simple. Was it that simple for you?
No. See, I say no because I'm so used to being told in college and in classes, our professors always said, you're not going to get a job right out of college that you want. So on one hand, it wasn't that easy, but on the other hand, it was that easy. The timing just worked out for me. The universe just gave me the right timing at the right time. I graduated at the perfect time, and I was able to go into the position that I wanted right off the bat. It was not paid, it was completely volunteer, but at the same time I was getting firsthand experience doing play-by-play, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So on the one hand, yes, it was easy, but on the other hand, no, it was not, because I still had to grind it out and earn the opportunity to be picked out of the other commentators that they had for that position.
So I read somewhere that you also had an interest in interior design.
Yes.
And that's so completely different than sports broadcasting. So how did you make that tough decision?
Funny enough, I actually did not make that decision. But like you mentioned, the two ends of the spectrum, completely different. I was actually in a fitness program first, my first year at Humber, and then wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in fitness, but it wasn't the angle that I wanted. So I was figuring out what I wanted to do. I always loved watching City Line, House and Home, like reading the magazines and that type of thing. And it always interested me and piqued my curiosity as to like what these people do when they're putting stuff together and what goes into it, and the mindset and just the frame of mind that they have to be in to decorate someone else's home, because you always want to decorate for yourself, but when you're doing it for someone else, it's a little bit different. And I was sitting with my athletic director at Humber at the time, Doug Fox, who's now retired, and we were sitting in his office going back and forth, and it was basically like deadline day. And he looked at me and was like, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't shut up. You need to go into radio. And it was probably the best decision I've let someone else make for me.
Now you moved from doing play-by-play announcing for the varsity league into the sort of professional league. What was that transition like?
Because I had 4 years at MAC doing the men's and women's games, the transition was easy, but it wasn't easy. I say it was easy because nothing changed. I was still doing play-by-play, I was still calling basketball. So the sport, the mindset, the frame of mind to be in, the preparation, all of that stuff that goes into actually calling a game, nothing changed in that mindset. But when it came to the level of play, it was completely different. I was primarily doing the women's side. I would occasionally do the men's games here and there if I needed to fill in for someone, or if I was lucky enough to do some of the games that I was able to do on Cable 14 when they were on TV. So that was probably the biggest hurdle I had to get over, was the jump from college varsity athletics to professional basketball, because the game is that much faster. People are bigger, they're stronger, so you have to keep up a lot faster. So I would say probably just the level of play was the hardest hurdle to get over.
So obviously I mentioned earlier that you made history. What does that feel like when people say, you're the first female Canadian play-by-play announcer for a professional league? Like when someone says that to you, what does that feel like to you? Or like, how do you interpret that?
At this point, it's sort of I've become numb to it, if you will. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation. I mean it in the sense that because people have asked about it, I've been asked that question numerous times. It's usually the first question I get, so thank you for it being like third or fourth. But it's great, but that's not why I wanted to get into play-by-play. That's not what I wanted to do for my career. I didn't go into broadcasting being like, I want to make history. I want to be the first this, the first that, the first something. I went into it because I wanted to continue within the sport of basketball and just sports in general. And I just needed to find a way, because I knew I wasn't going to play professional in the WNBA or overseas. So I needed to find another area I could continue within the sport, because I loved it so much and it gave me so much with my life. So it's great, but at the same time, as bad as it sounds, I almost don't care. Because this is what I want to do, and this is the career I've chosen, and I absolutely love calling a game. So the funny thing is, like, friends will watch games and sort of ask me, like, you seem like a completely different person when the headset goes on. And I'm like, you know what, when I'm in the frame between those two headphones and the mic's in front of me, I'm having a blast. I'm having the time of my life, whether it's high school, college, NBA D-League. Obviously, at some point I'd love to get to the NBA and get that opportunity, but my opportunity in the D-League has been amazing. So the moment that I get to turn my mic on and that headset goes on, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I could care less about history.
You mentioned obviously being an athlete and a player. Like, do you feel that gives you an edge to really be able to, you know exactly what's going on the court. You know how the players feel as athletes. You know, obviously, if someone is heading to a score where that team is going to lose, you know what that feels like, and because you obviously have a passion for basketball, does that help you in your day-to-day as a play-by-play commentator?
It does, and I wouldn't say it would give me an advantage or an edge. I think it makes my job a little easier because I've played the sport, I'm familiar with it, I kind of get the nuances and what's going on and how things are going to shape up, and when a team's coming down one way or the other, I can kind of see what they might do or may not do, so I can be ready for it in the sense of that. So it makes it a little easier as opposed to giving me an edge or an advantage. But at the same time, when it comes to a situation where the game's close and it's exciting and the team that you're pulling for to win is down, it kind of makes it that much more exciting to call the game because you don't know what's going to happen. Yes. So that's probably the most exciting part about my job, is the fact that when when I'm doing a game, I can kind of just decide at halftime, I'll usually be like, all right, I want this team to win. And then I'll just keep calling the game, not really worry about what's going on. And then I'll notice in the last couple minutes, oh, come on. And you almost want to get go back into player mode. So that's probably the toughest part, is staying in broadcast mode and not going back into player mode.
You mentioned there are a few spots for women who want to go to the WNBA or go down that path. But what about the spots for management? I mean, we've seen Becky Hammon. Obviously she's been celebrated as the first assistant coach for the Spurs. She obviously was the first, I think, female that was able to participate on the coaching staff for the All-Star NBA. When I hear these things like she's the first and there's nobody else after her, and I'm like, we're in 2016. Why do you think it's just been, progress has been so slow?
I think when you look at it, it comes to the fact that sports is so male dominated. Even on the women's side, although there's a lot more women working within the women's side, whether it's soccer, volleyball, hockey, basketball, they're not going to be celebrated because it's not a male sport. When you look at the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL and Major League Baseball, you just need those women to be celebrated, and you need more of them to just get into the league, not just in the sense of getting into the league for work-wise, but just having the confidence that they know what they're talking about. You look at Becky Hammon with the coaching staff. Stephanie Reddy was a coach in the D-League and is also the first female color commentator in the NBA with the Charlotte Hornets. Beth Mowins does college football in the NCAA, doing play-by-play. And then you look at Jessica Mendoza doing Major League Baseball, and now with the Buffalo Bills. Her name escapes me at the moment, but they've hired a female assistant coach. So you're seeing more and more start to happen, and I think the more it happens, the better it's going to be, and the more we're going to see it. But it's tough, especially with the male fans. They're hard to win over as a female, and because they're so used to it being male dominated, even in broadcasting, it's going to be tough for females to win them over. But the way I look at it, you look at Doris Burke in the NBA. She knows what she's talking about. She's respected by the players and the coaches. At the end of the day, if you're a female in sports, whether it's a coach, a broadcaster, front office, whatever it may be, whatever your role is, as long as you have the respect from your colleagues, your peers, who cares what the fans think? If I have the respect of the players and my peers and my colleagues, the fans really don't matter. And I think that's what some women fear, is not being liked, if you will, as sad as that is, not being liked by the male fan base. But at the end of the day, the male fan base isn't the one making the decisions. If the people who are making the decisions, that are writing the checks and hiring you, are okay with what you're doing, and they're the ones giving you the opportunity, you're golden.
And I think, like, you know, obviously it shows that women are at the same level in terms of knowledge of the sport. I mean, you mentioned respect. A lot of people in the league, when you read about Becky Hammond, they do respect her.
Yes.
So the respect piece is there, but, you know, obviously she's knowledgeable about basketball, and, you know, as a player herself, you know, I think that the players trust her.
Yes.
So.
And when coaching, trust is a big thing. And also too on the broadcast side, working with players, even the males that work in the broadcast side of things, players and coaches need to trust you in order to give you the information that you want for broadcasts and whatnot. So trust is a very important thing, and if you can get the trust not only of your coaches, your peers, your colleagues, it's going to make it easier.